This is the second audiobook reading of the book Non-Being and Nothingness by me, the non-philosopher Tim Snoodwood. Continuing at Chapter 5. Quantum bits don't bite unless you ask. So let's segue into the nature of the truth about non-being. I've said it in the past, and I'll say it again here as a condensed reformulation of Snavely's conundrum. There is a true claim that X exists. If X exists, then it is within the set of everything that exists. If the set of everything that exists, then it should be the case that it both contains itself and paradoxically includes and excludes nothing that does not exist. Now originally, I made it follow that nothing then must be the first cause to essentially cause the first thing that would be within everything that exists. Since it is logically incoherent for a thing to cause itself to be, and because the non-being is not being, how could the non-being split into its non-being and being nothing states to kickstart everything that exists in the first place? This solution, that the non-being is already split to begin with, led me to ask the question if the non-being that is currently being nothing is also capable of demonstrating that it is likewise already split or not. I know, it's a silly question, but bear with me. If the photon's energy is spaceless, timeless, and immaterial, and can be split inherently with an immediate replicatable single-slit interference pattern, in the fullness of its being, what does this imply for nothing's being? Perhaps a better question is, what meaningfully distinguishes a photon from nothing? Vacuum energy versus light energy. The 0,0D point versus the 1,0D point. Nobody versus the infinitesimal representation of egos fulfilling her, to those aware of the Gospel of Zilchenada. Nothing as nothing versus nothing as something. It appears the light itself is all that distinguishes endarkenment from enlightenment, literally and figuratively. So what if, now hear me out, our universe is contained within a photon, and other photons within the simple electromagnetic wave function are the contents of our multiverse within another universe, and photons hold in them the set of everything that exists within them as well. There is not much else to the photon that is objectively meaningful beyond its wave function and its approximate energetic particle form, after all. Only a non-being could reasonably stop this infinite regress of first photon-like containers of non-negatable world energy. So with this line of thinking, our photon, our egos, as the non-being's first being, would likely be a single solitary point of light energy. It is energy suspended in nowhere, being in itself spaceless, timeless, without mass, which would make it merely traditional E equals mc squared energy otherwise. It is in a perpetual superposition of states between being in action, given the number 1, and non-being, given the number 0. In this superposition, it would be acting as in being in active thought, as a single-bit quantum computer simulating the set of everything that exists. That is, if light could meaningfully exist by itself like that. Simulation theory couldn't compete with photon theory, for every simulation in simulation theory would emit even more photons to simulate everything naturally. Mwahaha. Well, that's enough writing for today. There is a fine line between brilliance and crazy, and I may have crossed the line into Crazy Town. Meta Crazy Town, since, you know, I am working in a mental health hospital. But the brilliance can be summed up with this short TLDR. It is simulation theory, but the matrix is a single quantum bit of light energy in superposition. But naturally, as I do, more questions popped up in my mind concerning the quantum light bit. If we are within a QLB, How is space still actively expanding? Could it be that everything is simply constantly shrinking to make space-time appear to be in active expansion in human reality? It could, but we've already chosen to suppose that the energy underlying being is genuine. Or could the cosmic microwave background be the QLB barrier? Mayhaps, but there is no way to tell. And couldn't the quantum vacuum bit be just as likely and stable to be the first being? Absolutely, because from both, all beings from such a non-being could emerge, and it can be observed that vacuum energy and light energy are within the set of everything that exists. That's not the problem. The problem is, I say in writing again, that the paradoxically unified answer to the question of why is there something rather than nothing is in the question's simultaneous negation and affirmation in stating that nothing is a possible state of being. Maybe it is not absolutely nothing cannot be observed, but rather, because absolutely nothing cannot be observed to contrast against something, how can we be sure that what we are observing isn't nothing? We can doubt and be uncertain in everything, yes, even the essence of our being, seeing that all action could have started from a definitionally inactive within its meta-space-time, QLB or QVB. Wouldn't this make the opposing nonsensical question of why is there nothing rather than something become just as valid of a question in this case, if the something has likewise not been observed in itself? The dichotomous bits are my examples of being as non-being, as a first cause. In the case of the QVB, it is not just nothing as a non-being, but is also infinitesimally something that paradoxically negates its very negating property of itself by its being whilst inactive. It shouldn't be able to do this. It would be the totality of nonsense if it existed whilst performing no actions to distinguish itself to be included amongst the set of everything that is being. But because the non-being has already been split, we can now see the negation of perpetually absolute non-being was and is and will be successful in our very being. Let me explain. By doubting the non-being success, we continue either in our indeterminate state of being, which is exactly as both the QLB and the QVB already are, or continue in wrong understanding of our being as being absolute in some form, as Descartes and Solipsis did. By affirming its success, we both validate the non-being's being whilst inactive, and we also validate nothing by stating that nothing is. Chapter 6. It is what its isness is. Is the equivocation of being and is a true or false one? Probably a false one, because as stated earlier, being implies an action in some form in time, but is does not carry with it such an implication. But, much like how being implies the being of a being, so does is implies the isness of that which it is. When it is what it is, its isness is it, and it is nobody's and everybody's business to question what the isness of it is. The investigation of possible negation is what gives isness its power. What or who is it? Where is it? How is it that way? Why is it that way? Thus, since is not constrained to be physical in the world, isness can equivocate what it is mathematically and qualitatively as well, and hold true even whilst being inactive in and of itself, bypassing the question of its objective state of being. What is equivocating whatever the subject making the statement puts before and after the is. What isness is the totality of what a subject could potentially reasonably and truly equivocate to it. It, the before, is the equivocation of what it is, the after, which is its isness. And since what it is its isness, it is its isness. So if it is an object, its isness can be broken down into its objective and subjective qualities. If it is a subjective thing, or if we acknowledge that only the object's subjective qualities are up for discussion, what it is up for debate. Its isness is up for debate. Even when we say, this is what makes up the object, the objectification of the object is oftentimes incomplete, and can likewise be debated. For example, when does a cup become a bowl? Or when does a cup become a non-cup, and becomes something else like a jug, mug, or plate? Are shot glasses cups? Is what makes up a cup existentially connected to its equipmentality to be used and be ready to hand as a cup-like object in the world of concern? Perhaps. It is a cup until it is not a cup, cries a subject. Ah, but its cupness is an abstraction of your perceptions perceiving it to be used as an equipment of being a cup, cries the negator. Yeah, so? Inquires the subject. The negator answers. If a cup is merely your perception of it being a cup, if it is how I, my subject, sees what it is, then even the isness of the object being a cup is up for a reasonable subject's debate to demonstrate that the object in question is not being a cup. I am what I am, declared a subject. Ah, but your amness, merely being the first-person singular form of isness, is likely the abstraction of your perceptions perceiving yourself to being your own equipment, as being yourself. Tell me, my dear subject, what is the self's amness while you are not perceiving yourself being yourself? The subject proposes, my amness would continue as being schizophrenic. The negator tries once more. Ah, but what is the self's amness while you are not perceiving yourself as being yourself, nor as being schizophrenic? The subject, who may as well be me, gives a final rebuttal. My amness would continue as being an idiot in my own world alongside nobody, an active imagination whilst actively negating myself to the point of being like the non-being which indeterminately bees, as its primary mode of being in the world alongside us in human reality. Zilch, damn it, I am hungry. I can go for some tacos being alongside me inside myself in human reality right now. Splat, oh shit, I got Frank's hot sauce on the page because I put that shit on the set of everything that exists. Hashtag not sponsored, but hashtag would love to be sponsored because I believe Frank's is being a badass hot sauce in the world alongside us in human reality, and I hope they continue to be a badass forever more. Ramen. And that was a long string of words that were connected by hyphens. Definitely can't get that in audio. But enough about this amness. That only has applications to the self. Chapter 7. The Brotherhood of Chairs. There is more to say concerning isness, and we shall investigate the depths of isness by asking the most mundane of questions and asking, what is it, and what is it not? For example, what is a chair? What is not a chair? And is there any defining feature that can be given to a chair that cannot hold true for any other household object? What about the chair's capability of being used as equipment? Let's talk about the features of the chair first, since it will tell us its dimensions. A stereotypical chair has 3 key features. A seat, with the primary function being to sit an object on. A back, with its function to help the sitter remain sitting. And legs, with the function to elevate the seat above the plane of the floor. Some chairs have arms to aid the back with its function. Some chairs have belts or tables adhered to them for added safety and utility. But the stereotypical chair has legs, a back, and a seat. Here we shall ask if there are any of the components of a chair necessary to keep its usefulness as a word describing a thing being in the world alongside us in human reality? Well, backs aren't necessary, since there are some saddle chairs named as such with just its seat, and some stools are likewise functional chairs as well. And the legs aren't really necessary either, since stadium chairs are legless within the stadium context, and barbershop chairs function with only one leg. At first glance, only something needs to be in place to make the seat not on the floor to make it a chair. But does a stadium chair become not a chair when it is removed from the stadium context? Can a stadium chair lay bare in the meadow and lose its title of chairhood? Maybe. There surely is an argument to be had there. But if the stadium chair doesn't lose its chairhood in a meadow, can just the seat of the stool maintain any hope of maintaining its title of chairhood? Even less so. The question now becomes, in light of this ambiguous disc in a meadow being a chair or not, is seatness required within a chair's isness? Does the seat make the chair? If we absurdly remove the seat, but return the legs, back, and arms into their proper place, and ask a sitter to rest their weight on the chair in question's arms and back, is it good enough to say that this object has joined the brotherhood of chairs? Perhaps it would. Either as the arms becoming the seat of the chair, or as the object simply being a broken or incomplete chair that people keep procrastinating on replacing the seat. If it isn't a chair, then no part is inherently necessary to the chair's isness, if we likewise negate its back and legs as being necessary to a chair. If the warped and uncomfortable and difficult to sit on chair is a chair, which it surely is, then it would be wrong to bar Vlad the Impaler's impaling poles from the beloved brotherhood of chairs as well. And me, I'm a chair. You're a chair. Everything is a chair. Is nothing a chair, or is everything a chair? Or are there only things that are more chair-like than others, even when there is only the non-chair in the middle of the being a chair abstraction? This is the way I see it. As equipment, a thing is more chair-like if it functions well as a seat. Then it is more chair-like if its seat feature is off of the ground. A chair is more chair-like when it aids the sitter in question in sitting upright, relative to the ground. A chair for me may be a bed for a guinea pig. A chair becomes less chair-like as it is elongated to fit multiple people and becomes more bench-like or couch-like. A chair becomes less chair-like when the seating plane is jaggedly sharp or otherwise unfit or unsafe for sitting on, like a chair of nails or an impaling pole. Now, don't get me wrong. We can still define the dimensional features of a particular chair-like object. We can define it according to its function as equipment, like how we can observe what Merriam-Webster did when they defined a chair as 1. A seat, typically having 4 legs and a back for one person. 2. An official seat or a seat of authority, state, or dignity. 3. A position of employment, usually of one occupying a chair desk. 4. Any various devices that hold up or support. But although the particular chair-like object is objective in nature, made of mass electric stuff, the chairness of the chair is subjective and relative to the object capable of sitting in the chair. Tiny chairs are for dolls to sit on, and giant chairs are for mythically proportionate imaginary giants to sit on, or for people with equally mythically gigantic egos who think the chair is fitting for them. But the chair's isness is not, in all likelihood, because it adds nothing to the chairness of the chair. And the last time I checked, 0 necessary parts for a chair, plus 0 necessary atoms for a chair, plus 0 necessary subjects to use a chair as equipment, plus 0 necessary attributes for a chair, equals 0 chairs to be observed. The chair is non-being. But this chair, this particular chair that is being sat on by my plumpish ass, this cubish chair that exclusively refracts blue electromagnetic waves as perceived by the retinas, maintains a mass of about 15 pounds, a back that reaches about 36 inches off the ground, arms that solidly protrude about 27 inches off the ground, and a seat about 18 inches off of the ground, with 4 thick legs whose precise dimensional analysis would be too long to describe, is being in the world alongside me right now, in time, in human reality. At the time I wrote that. Because right now, I'm sitting in a different chair. That is black. Very simple. Very foldy. Chapter 8. The postmodernists finally lost the vogueness. As an intriguing but related tangent, vogueness is a form of being. Didn't you know? It is essentially being with whatever is cool in the moment. The vogueness of society is precisely what is discarded in the postmodern movement. To go beyond the modern, you have to become postmodern. An unspecified shift from whatever is being cool right now towards being whatever the self thinks will be cool in the future. But as it stands, whatever is not cool is still a form of being. It's just being lame. And ironically, if postmodernism caught on amongst the populace at the moment and ceased being lame, then it would just become modernism again. So to get ahead and stay ahead, the postmodernists arose seemingly out of nowhere to ensure that they stayed ahead of the modern, always living in the future, but never now. But unfortunately, upon the release of the movie Honey, We Shrunk Ourselves, the postmodernists were perturbed to discover the future is now, which made their precious ideology succumb to the hungry modernist vogue once again. The same fate met the postmodernists and the postmodernists. They got way too popular and fell from their highly intricate ideologies stacked like an endless tower of post-it notes. Then, on one fateful day, a singular postmodernist discovered nihilism. They found the truth that was eating at the base of their ideology, and that was the fact that nothing can escape from the vogue. So the postmodernist way of thinking could finally be free from the wretched plebs of filthy modern thinking. They found the ultimate form of postmodernism, and zilch damn it, it's getting too cool to be a nihilist too! So what, then, can be safe from the vogue? Pre-modernist thought, perhaps? Shall critical thought eternally regress to the point of minimal or no thought in the name of anti-vogueness? Yes. And that is why postmodernist thinking suddenly got really quiet. The vogue got to them. Therefore, the thoughts held in the head of the modern postmodernist are in a state of non-being. It was the only way to lose the vogue. This is relevant because we can use this non-modernist realization to investigate isness more thoroughly. We can ask, for a chair that is vogue, does the vogueness add anything to the chair's isness? The answer, rather than being a certain no, is more of a to what degree? Or more like, depends on who is investigating the isness of the chair. The reasoning for this is the reasoning was attempted to be demonstrated, is that if you indirectly ask what a thing, or more specifically, a chair in itself is, we have concluded that there is nothing there, since no single thing can be in itself without having two selves. However, when we go about indirectly asking what qualities a thing has, this bypasses the two-self requirement for asking what a thing is in itself, and instead asking what a thing is itself. Even if the precise level of vogueness a thing can vary from person to person, asking what level of vogueness a particular chair has will always be a valid question to ask. The answer will likewise be a valid answer, even if the Vogue units used to reach a particular value are unknown and unstandardized. All things under investigation, even in apparent absence of things, can be asked how vogue this particular thing of appearance is. So even when there is nothing at the core of the thing in itself, the set of potential qualities that can be used to describe the isness of the thing are not null, and adds understanding to what the thing is, when a common understanding is held concerning what such a quality means when it is attributed to a thing. Chapter 9. Yes, no, 4 rocks, and none of the above. Let's now return to I's amness. Now that the displaced chair's vogueness as a specific function of its isness has been investigated, is there any feature of the self that could meaningfully distinguish the self from others? Or is there any unique function that only I could perform as a form of equipment for others? The chair is an other with features unnecessary to its isness of being a chair. But can we say the same about humans in their amness of being a human? Pragmatically and practically speaking, yes. You don't need those arms and legs to continue being you. You can continue to be you with 1 kidney, 1 lung, half of your liver, half of your intestines, and even half of your brain. Your heart can be transplanted, your pituitary glands supplemented into obsolescence, and your bones replaced by either metal or hard prosthetic ones. The only things I can think of that are not replaceable with our current development of technology are things in the very center of the brain that are necessary to maintain vital function, like the pons, and that general area near the top of the spinal column. Those cannot be surgically replaced. But we can still get pedantically microscopic and take even those areas out cell by cell and atom by atom, since not every cell nor atom contained within the pons are necessary for it to remain functioning as the pons. And every bit of our DNA can, and naturally does, become deleted and makes additions all the time. Every atom of our being likewise adds nothing to the whole of our individual amness. But shall we say in this one instance that 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0 equals 1? No, don't be preposterous. I am null. There is nothing at the core of my amness. Every conscious thing that hears and understands this logic simultaneously can affirm and negate its soundness. I cannot be nothing whilst being in active thought, but I must be nothing because no feature and no part of me is ontologically necessary for me to be as I am. And this is the crux of Snavely's conundrum, the inescapable reductio ad absurdum of critical existential thought. I am both, either, neither, being, and or nor, nothing. My amness is also, possibly, not non-being. And because this reduction is inescapable at this point, it then follows that everything that exists indeterminately exists, perpetually and perfectly paradoxically, is what it is not, as in its isness is its notness. The isness possibly is its notness, and its isness is not its notness. Yes, no, both, and neither. 1, 0, 0 to the 0th power, and blank. And so long as everything that exists is not nothing that exists exists certainly. But if everything is nothing, like the chair at the center of its being is actually non-being, then even nothing the thing also indeterminately exists. To reiterate this point, we've already deduced how a non-being can be the first cause as a single QVB stuck between being a point and not being at all. Thus, every being indeterminately exists, just as the non-being also indeterminately exists. Shall I continue this meaninglessly meaningful rant? Not when I have nothing more to say to you. Nothing more. Now, what can we use to distinguish the nouns of non-being and not a being from the adjectives used to describe the isness of nothingness? Nobody versus the empty void that surrounds her. Nothing as the thing in itself versus the post hoc attributes of nothingness. I have hinted at this solution already, but let's go more in depth. It is what it is, which is its isness, which is the totality of attributes that are accurately and potentially attributable to it. This totality of attributes is never fully known, but when consensus between subjects, i.e., peer review, is reached concerning a thing in question, understanding of the thing increases, thus filling in our gaps of understanding it by adding to its isness. Even if and when the meta-qualia dimensional analysis I am currently performing is complete, and each of those dimensions is methodically measured and defined for a thing, that doesn't mean that its isness has reached its totality, since concernings of it may lie beyond our current language constraints, only because it's impossible to reach infinite precision, especially for units of arbitrary measures like beauty or vogueness. And even when its isness is as close to complete as reasonably possible, by measuring every finite dimension concerning a thing, there is still the concern of the thing's totality of involvements with everything else in mass electric spacetime, and the new qualia values created from these totality of involvements. Science as a whole then holds the potential to be majorly made of attempts at winning the Ig Nobel Prize in mere hopes of accidentally stumbling upon new findings worthy of the Nobel Prize. I can see it now. The 2300 Nobel Prize goes to the successful lung transplant with a mycelium-infused rubber bath toy. No thing can be fully known, but methodically sorting out its isness will get us as close to it as we can get. And conversely, only nothing can be fully known, because nothing doesn't actually interact with everything that exists. It is merely the medium everything that exists in. And every conceivable and inconceivable negation and substantive dimension used to measure things in mass electric space-time quanta qualia for the non-being is zero, in the form of its self-negation as being as non-being. This indeterminacy about the nature of nothing as non-being tells us nothing about nothing, which is simultaneously circular, tautologous, complete, and self-negating, by our being as null in the world in human reality. And since we bring the zero into being by our being aware of it, rather than leave the value space empty, so long as we acknowledge that the zero exists only as a stand-in for the non-existent empty void, we can perhaps bring philosophy back full circle in demonstration of why and how I know that I know nothing fully. Nothing, in essence, is the totality of non-involvements, the totality of non-attributes, and is what it is not, which is everything. But mostly just the first two things. Shall I become a triagnostic nihilist now, knowing nothing, no thing, and the blank? Probably not, because no thing implies the emptiness of every concernful thing within its context. Thus, there are only two nothings to know, by which we can know nothing fully. The total lack of things, no thing, and the thing in itself, by which all things which can be negated are negated, nothing. In this way, I also demonstrate how the nothingness, which is the first cause, even while it is whole, is already split. Nothing's splitness is part of its isness, just as its wholeness is part of its isness. Since it is what it is, namely nothing, and it is what it isn't, namely everything, everything is nothing, and it is also not nothing. I don't think I require a further explanation that wasn't made clear in the Gospel of Zilch and Nada concerning my intimate explanations of the void, since they are self-negating and perhaps even based on baselessness, which is common for the well-reasoned to recognize the non-reason within, and for the well-sensed to see the nonsense at work. But truly, I say to you, whatever is the rock of your understanding, be it God, or science, or being for yourself and others, or reason in itself, beneath that rock there is nothing. I will not negate these four rocks, for to do so may result in devastating disequilibrium to our collective society, and I fear that I may be too good of a sophist that I could succeed in doing so in the minds of others if I tried. To Zilch and Nada belong devotion, to science belong knowledge, to being for yourself and others belongs philanthropy, and to reason belongs meditations and self-discipline. I have negated everything below these rocks, and many things above these rocks, but it may do society some good to recognize that the foundations of understanding are based on nothing but the I whose amness is the reflector of understanding. I think that's good for now. Until next time, kumbaya, Mother Deckers.